Hi everyone, it's Sue Plumb here to share another scrapbook process video with you. Today's layout that I am sharing is my fourth and final project for the month of May using the Kitaholic Kits May Kit. Now for today's layout, I was actually focusing on the Heidi Swapp Carefree collection that's included in this month's kit. And it's got a lot of sort of earthy sort of tones to it, which is why I chose the photo that I am working with today, which is a beautiful photo that I took when I was at the Grand Canyon a couple of years ago. And obviously there's a lot of earthy tones in a photo of the Grand Canyon, so I thought that would work really well with this collection. So I started with one of the pattern papers as my background for this one today, and it's got this sort of sketchy floral print on it. It's really pretty, but I thought that I needed to tone down the pattern just sort of in the center area of the page because I didn't want it to detract from the focal area of my page too much. So I went in with white first, and after I applied the white, I thought it hadn't sort of stripped it back enough. And I also wanted to warm up the background paper just a little bit. So I actually used some Naples yellow, that's my Montmartre acrylic paint. And I used my brayer and I actually applied a little bit of yellow to it as well. As I said, it was just to sort of warm up that background a bit. So once I had the acrylic paint down on the background, which just sort of stripped back that pattern slightly, you could still see it poking through, but it just sort of detracted some of the attention away from that floral pattern in the background. I turned my attention to some of the other pattern papers in the kit, which are also from the Heidi Swapp Carefree collection. And I chose that one that I had already worked with for a couple of previous projects. I still had a bit of it left over, and I thought, hey, why waste it? Because the tearing's already done for me. So I chose that one to go underneath my photo as a photo mat. And then I was looking for a secondary pattern that I could actually put underneath that as well as a second photo mat. Now, I did choose this beach photo paper. Now, if you watched my unboxing, you would have seen me mention that photo papers aren't really my jam. I prefer something that's a little bit more abstract, like a pattern, and something that's a little bit easier to work with. But one of my subscribers on here actually mentioned about why use it as a photo paper, just cut it up and use it for the colors. And that was exactly what I did. So I chose a piece first. It sort of had this bluey green tone sticking out from behind it. And that's what I started with. But once I got it down on the page like that and I looked at it, I actually thought it needed something neutral because it was too much contrast in the background and I sort of wanted it to work in a little bit better. So I actually grabbed a different sort of section of that paper. You can see I've got that part of the paper that's got the wave on it and the sand. And I thought those sort of light coloured neutrals worked a lot better with the palette that I was going for here. Now, I've also tucked into my stack there one of the paper doilies that are included in this month's kit. And up above my photo there, I used one of the other pattern papers and a craft tag from my stash just to trace out a couple of little tags, made my own tags, so that I could tuck them in the layers behind there. And now I'm going to grab some of my baker's twine because I love my baker's twine, and I'm actually tying off the tags to tuck in there. I love the little bit of texture and interest that tying tags off with twine gives. I mean, you could also sort of use like jute string, or you could use ribbon, or anything that's got some fibers to it just to give you that bit of interest. Now, I also chose the journal card that I was going to work with, which came from the Carefree ephemera pack, which you can see I've got there in that bowl there. Now, I dug through that bowl and I pulled out a few bits and pieces that I thought would work well on this layout. And this was kind of a bit of a wing it layout, I want to say. I didn't really have any set plan when I went in with this. I just knew that I wanted to use a pattern paper background and that I wanted to really embrace the sort of muted, earthy, neutrals, all of that are included in this collection. Okay, so you can see I've got my two tags tucked in behind there. I've got the doily that provides me not only a layer, but I like to use doilies for the circular shape because I like the way that the circular shape of a doily breaks up all those other blocky shapes that you have when you've got, a rectangular or a square photo. Then you've got the papers that are in that sort of shape. Quite often, stickers are rectangles and other things might be squares, and I just like adding that round, soft line into my page. And the other reason I like to use doilies is because of the holes in the doilies. You can see what's underneath coming through the layer, like coming through from behind, and it just adds that extra layer. You can see I've also gone in with some frayed gauze in my stack, and you'll know that I use that regularly because I like the way it adds soft texture to a page. And again, it's another one of those elements that you can put on your page and it doesn't block off everything behind it. I like being able to see through things to what's underneath because that's what gives your page depth. So as I said earlier, I used a brayer to apply my paint, and one of the reasons I like using a brayer to apply paint is because it applies it thinly and you can still see what's underneath. So you can see I've got 2 layers of paint there. I've got multiple layers of paper and a doily, and I've got texture and everything. But if you looked closely at this page and you looked at the detail there, you can still see the pattern that's on the background paper. And I just love all of the layers. All right, I'm going to stop. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. I'll go back to what I'm doing here. So I'm actually just fiddling around with some of the pieces, the die cuts from the ephemera pack there. I found that sort of soft pink, that large floral piece that I put on the right-hand side. There was a couple of tickets there that are also in those warm sort of pinky, peachy tones. I found a flower that matched. I found that little vellum piece, that wander far and wide. I absolutely love working with vellum. Now, depending on what the piece is of the vellum that I'm working with will depend on what adhesive I use. Now, because I wanted this piece to remain flat on my journal tag, you'll see that I attach it using a tape runner that I get from Kmart. They're like $2. And I find they are really good to hold down, lightweight vellum, and it doesn't show through. The adhesive on those tape runners does not show through. You sometimes have to be a bit careful about what you stick it behind. Obviously, if it was like acetate and it was see-through, you would see it a little bit. It's not enough to bother me, but behind a vellum like this that is, a bit more opaque than an acetate, you won't see the adhesive. Now, if I was working with a vellum flower, and you know how much I like to curl things up from the page, then I would use a liquid adhesive because vellum, when it gets wet like that, it tends to curl up, and I actually like the effect that it gives. So I'll point that out to you next time I use like a vellum flower or a leaf or something where I want it to curl, and I'll show you the difference between how they sit flat on the page with sort of the tape runner, or they can curl up with a liquid adhesive. Now, for my title there, down underneath my photo, I actually used some of the raw chipboard thickers that were included in this month's kit. And I also used that die cut word breathe just to form my title, which was just breathe, because I was highly overexcited when I was at the Grand Canyon, I can tell you. It was pretty emotional, and I felt like as soon as I set eyes on it, when I got off the tour bus, I thought I was going to burst into tears because it was the number one thing on my bucket list. So it was a really emotional moment to finally see it laid out before me like that. Okay, so going back to what I'm doing, I was working on the premise of having the 3 main clusters. So I've sort of got my tags and my journal card were like my first cluster up in the top left corner there. I then padded it out on the right hand side with those die cuts from the ephemera pack, and then down the bottom my third cluster essentially was where my title was, and I also put another little die cut flower there just to pad that out, as I said, and just balance it all off against one another. Now, I didn't use my typewriter for my journal card today because I knew I was tucking it in underneath the photo and I was a bit worried about the room, so I just grabbed a pen and I just handwrote my journaling on that one this time. Now I'm digging through, you can see that I've put that sticker across the bottom of the photo, like I like to usually put text on my photos, and it just says life is an adventure. So I thought that was perfect for this. Now I've got a wood veneer heart there that actually came from one of the previous Kitaholic kits. I can't remember what month it's from, so if anyone knows, you can correct me. I just used that because, again, it was one of those wood veneers, one of those nice natural elements that worked well with all these earthy tones. And I just popped that on top of that cluster on the right-hand side just to give it a bit more height and just a bit of extra interest. Now, to finish this page off, I actually went in with some of those Bow Bunny candy dots, which are just little enamel dots. I've said previously, I love the colorway of this pack. So I just sprinkled some of those around my page. And then I finished off with some black Liquitex acrylic ink, just did a bit of splattering. And I also, I did the stamping as well. So it's really subtle on the background. I used one of the butterflies from that pink paisley stamp set, and some grey ink, just a soft grey, and just stamped out some butterflies in 3 spots on my page. And that was my page done. So I'm quite happy with how this one came together. I do like the challenge of working with like a more muted colour palette like this. I love how much texture this page came out with, and I'm really happy with how it came together. If you like what you saw today, please give me a thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe button. And that's all my May projects done. I will see you again with another project soon. Bye.